Hey everybody, welcome back to the 13th episode of Taps and Patience. I am AJ with Design the Everything here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. How you doing?
I'm doing good this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Though I said I was going to find something funny to say, I did not intend on saying the introduction funny as the joke.
Chop it up to too many hours of work.
Yeah,
uh, so, have a good Thanksgiving?
I did. I actually had a great Thanksgiving. We went down to my parents' house on Wednesday and stayed there overnight until Thursday, and headed back. Um, and I think this was the first Thanksgiving in a long time where it wasn't like butted up against work, and we're trying to leave late on Wednesday right after work, or early
Yeah.
in the morning on Thursday. It was nice. It was a nice, relaxing kind of hang out with family and eat
Mm-hmm.
food.
That's good. So, um, we had a pretty good Thanksgiving here as well. I had like three Thanksgivings though: the
Okay.
in-laws, the outlaws, and some other friends. So
Okay.
I've put on at least 5 pounds.
Do you do them all in the same day?
So it was one on Wednesday and then two on Thursday.
Okay.
So,
We did one on Thursday, one on Sunday.
oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
then also, this is, I think, my favorite family tradition. Our tradition is that for Thanksgiving, we have non Thanksgiving foods. We have weird foods. Um, with the idea being like all of my siblings are married now. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were all doing two Thanksgivings. And that's a lot of turkey. So
Yeah.
for my family, like one year we did tacos. One year we did fondue. This year we did Thai food, and I don't know. I just very much enjoy that because it's like, my mom puts all the same amount of effort into it as she would a normal Thanksgiving, but it's
Mm-hmm.
other foods you don't normally get as much.
That
So
actually sounds really cool. I like that a lot. So, but no, it was good. It was busy last week though. I I put in a lot of hours last week. Some of them on a project I did for you.
yeah, so that was the tape measures,
That
right?
was the tape measures. Yeah.
So for context for everybody else here, I just finished assembling those tape measures, and they're packed up waiting to go in the mail. I definitely told people I was going to ship them tomorrow, but I hit some delays, which we can get to later. But how did machining them go?
Machining them went surprisingly smooth. For all this, the pre planning and everything that I did, I kind of did a last minute punt at the very end when I got the latest version. So when I got them, you had already mirrored the two halves and you had them side by side with the openings for your finger hole in the tape measure going out the bottom. Like if they were side by side, then they're pointing down. I rotated them 90 to face inward. That way, when I stuck them in a set of soft jaws, um, the pass would go into each other. So they'd go between the two parts through that opening when clearing out the inside.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And so that ended up making it made it to where I didn't have to clear out as much space in my soft jaws because I was just holding one set at a time. And it allowed the tool paths to jump in that gap between each other when doing the inside stuff. Um, and so um, that ended up working out really, really well. So I was really happy with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about that.
So, um, but other than that, I was glad I ordered the thicker material because I remember you did it at a half inch. I did it at a 5/8, and that left me about an eighth of an inch, roughly, of material on op one. So I just used a regular set of jaws for op one and just grabbed it just barely on the bottom, did all the machine work, and then flipped it over in op two in the soft jaws. Um, and in the soft jaws, I had it sitting down to where the part was only about a 16th above the soft jaws, and that was just so I could chamfer the edges when I was done. But the rest of it was in the part was in the soft jaws. Um, and so and then I had to create two relief pockets between the two parts at like a half depth. That way, whenever the 1/8 inch came in to slot, that part where the tape actually comes through your part, um, it had a hole that a pocket that could go into and wasn't going straight into the soft jaws. So, but I was pretty happy with how those turned out.
Yeah, they were
Um,
fantastic. They
yeah.
um, they looked great. I didn't have any problems with them. Um, the so I mentioned things taking longer than they should have. I There were a couple things that went into that. So I got them, raw aluminum, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to finish them. And the first thing I did was put them in corncob media to give them a nice consistent polish,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to round over the edges, or I didn't want to round over the corners to make the seam bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And they looked pretty nice after that, but they were like, because I didn't go through like a full several multi-stage polishing routine, so they weren't like near. And plus, I
Mm-hmm.
because I was kind of in a hurry, I put more in my tumbler than I should have if I really wanted a mirror. So they were, bumping into each other, and
Mm-hmm.
the result was this like polished finish that also had a scratch pattern. So kind of like halfway between a polish and a stone wash.
Interesting.
And it was, and I didn't dislike it, but it was scratched enough that like clearly wasn't polished, but
Mm-hmm.
not so. But the scratch pattern wasn't aggressive enough to hide like future scratches and wear,
Mm-hmm.
which a tape measure will definitely see. And so I put it back in a different media that was a plastic abrasive media. It's pretty common for tumbling aluminum,
Mm-hmm.
and I just gave it like 20 minutes in there, and it came out looking really really good. It was a nice even scratch pattern. The current corners weren't very rounded, and it'll hide future wear pretty well. But the
Awesome.
problem was the problem. So these
Mm-hmm.
tape measures have five holes, 5/8 inch diameter holes,
Mm-hmm.
ranging from a 1/4 inch deep to I think one's like a 1/2 inch deep, which was actually an error in my design that we also should fix. And you want to guess how big corncob media is?
I'm gonna guess it's just big enough to fit in there.
Yes, it is. And every single one of those holes was packed with the corncob media. And then to make it worse, is it got wet when I tumbled it in the
Oh.
pyramid, so it expanded in there.
Oh no.
And I spent basically an entire day picking those holes clean.
Oh.
Um, I
That's
found out it
horrible.
helped a little bit if I used a heat gun to dry out the media was in there, but it wasn't really worth the time. And so basically, I think it was like a 2 millimeter drill bit in a set of pin vices and like my air gun, and I just sat in this chair and cleaned out every single one of those
Oh,
holes.
that's like cleaning out like a million iPhone headphone jacks
Yes.
with pocket lint from pocket lint.
So that was a little tedious and added a lot to my processing time.
Well, I'm sorry that you had to deal with that.
I mean,
That
it wasn't
sucks.
your fault. I just unexpected consequence.
No, no, I just feel your pain because I haven't had that many parts, but I have tumbled some stuff and then had to dig out media, and it sucks. So
I, Media will, if you give it any chance to get into something, it will 100%
yeah.
of the time. If there's a
Hmm.
hole, the media will find it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and always inevitably, whatever media size you choose a hole size that's just big enough for it to fit
Yes.
in.
Well, I've gotten better at not doing that. Basically, my rule of thumb is the media needs to be 3 times bigger than the biggest hole that you don't want it to get into, and or 3 times smaller than the smallest, or the 3 times smaller than the smallest hole that you do want it to get into.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you do that, you're pretty safe. And sometimes you have to like mix and match medias. So
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, actually, I run a mixed media with like a large media and a small media. And the small media gets in the small holes, and the big media is more aggressive at rounding holes and stuff, but or rounding
So,
corners.
so it seems how we're talking about media, and I don't remember if we've talked about this or not. Have you ever looked into vapor honing?
I have talked with people about it. I've never really gone too far into the rabbit hole,
Mm.
mostly because I would need one of the more expensive systems that does water recycling in my shop. I don't have very much water pressure here, and also I don't have any drains.
Ah, okay.
So it's not really practical for my setup here, but
I've looked into it, and if I do a lot more anodized parts, at some point I'd like to get it because it makes it a
yeah,
really nice finish for aluminum.
yeah. I don't know. I like tumbling. It's a passive process. Scaling it's
I
pretty easy. If I needed twice as much tumbling capacity, I could spend $400 and have twice as much tumbling capacity. Right.
Speaking of which, I need to get the type of tumblers that you have because I have one tumbler and it's a vibratory tumbler from Harbor
Mm-hmm.
Freight.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
it's their larger model, but it's still really small for my parts that I try to stick in it because they can't rotate through it. The media they get caught on the edge, and it's loud. Oh, it is so loud. Yours, they rotate on a drum, so I feel like they'd be a lot quieter because they don't have that vibrating procession that uh, is just so annoying.
I have two tumblers running within 20 feet of me right now,
Yeah,
probably 12 feet.
yeah,
And yeah, you can like I can podcast. I'm sure that it shows up in the audio, but
yeah,
they're quiet.
yeah. And I would do a lot more tumbling if mine was that quiet. So
Yeah,
I need to look into getting some of those.
I really like mine. The other nice thing about the rotary tumblers is one, you can use like a lot of fluid with them,
Mm-hmm.
and I generally do a 1-to-1 ratio of media to fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And by fluid, I generally mean water plus a little bit of dish soap, unless I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing parts that'll rust, in which case I have an additive that I add. But the other
Mm-hmm.
big advantage is like the how is the Harbor Freight one you have a 5 pound
I
capacity,
bel
or
I
is it 20?
believe no, it's not a 20. If anything, it's a 5. It's the tan one, and it's probably about the size of a basketball or a little bit bigger.
Anyway, what I was going to say is the rotary ones you can like. There's a lot more. You can fit a lot more media and parts in them relative to their size.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an 18 pound, according
It,
to
it's
the Harbor Freight.
it's tan with a black top. I think is what it is, like a tan base or a gray base, something like that.
Yeah. So my tumblers are smaller and quieter, and I think
Well,
you can do about 20 pounds.
they might be smaller in terms of volume, but I still bet you can turn or tumble larger parts than you can of the Harbor Freight one, just because it's like a donut, and so you have to have parts that are like at least half the size, half the width of the donut or less. So really tiny parts.
Yeah. The downside of the rotary ones is they are lower energy and therefore less aggressive. So I probably have to like double my tumbling times compared to like a nice vibratory tumbler.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I would take that for the noise reduction and being a passive process.
Yes. Yeah, and it's
So
not a big deal to tumble overnight.
no, no, just turn it on, let it go. Or you get like if you need to set it for a time, do you use those um the timer outlet things that you can get for running things?
I have tried that. The problem is you get weird staining on your parts if it sits for an extended period of time with just the media on the part.
Ah,
You get staining, especially with aluminum and steel. Not really a deal on stainless or titanium, but you can get
gotcha,
weird staining issues.
gotcha.
So if that happens, you just run the tumbler for an extra 20 minutes or whatever.
That'll work. That's cool. We found out, speaking of time and things sitting, um, we got our laser in last week. So for those of you who haven't been following along, my laser went down for about 2 weeks, and I had to get a replacement. And during that time, we have had a back order of probably close to 300 parts or more, um, and we're still chewing through that. Um, and we should be starting on the last 150. Like we're about halfway through, but the last 150 of them are pretty small and should go pretty quick. Um, but we had like close to 50 tumblers that we were working on today, and we would remove the powder coat layer on the front of the tumblers. And we got a system going where my cousin would be running the tumblers on the laser, and then I would be cleaning them. But he was running them faster on the laser than I could clean them, and so they started developing a backlog. And when you remove the powder coat laser with the fiber, it leaves a little bit of a residue behind that you have to wipe off to show the stainless underside of the tumbler. And if you let them sit, they cool down, and that smoky substance that's on it like solidifies on it
Really
and is really hard to remove. And so we had to stop and catch up on all the tumblers that he had already done. And then we had to time the laser to whichever one of us was cleaning. That way, when one person got done cleaning, there was a few seconds delay while the laser was finishing up, and then we would hand them the next one while it was hot, and it would clean off so much easier, so much faster.
interesting. I wonder if it's like a layer of the plastic that's being left.
I
Like,
think
is
it
that why
is.
cooling matters? Huh.
I think it
Who would have
is.
thought?
So, because it would be like sticky and tacky, like you're removing like tape residue.
Yeah,
And if it was hot, it would just wipe off pretty easily with like alcohol or ethanol. Um, but as soon as that stuff solidified, man, you'd have to put some real elbow grease in it to try to get it off, and it was pain. So yeah, it's the things you kind of like, and that's one reason I've been really looking forward to doing some higher volume stuff with our laser, because high volume shows you the problems in your process that you normally don't care about because you're just doing onesie twosies. So, so like high volume forces you to pay attention to the small details that you would normally ignore, and um, I love that fact. That's one of the things I love about high volume is that it makes me a better machinist, uh, just by the nature of how do I make this repeatable? How do I make it a little bit better? What things actually matter? Like if I tweak this, can I see it make a change over the next 10 parts and cause improvements? So, for example, I'll use your parts because I remember running your parts. Um, when I ran your first one, the first one I ran through, I forgot to add all the chamfering in on the backside, on the inside of it. So for your next ones that I started running, um, my standard is about a 5 thou chamfer on parts whenever I don't have a value. And so that's what I started with. And it was a little bit too big. So I don't know, on a couple of those, it might not be as much rounding as it had a bigger chamfer there to begin with. And I just kept backing it off, and playing with the fit and feel of everything. And I think I ended up around a 1 or 2 thou chamfer on all of your mating edges because it still allowed it for a good pop, but removed all of the onion skin, or not onion skin, but the like whenever you would run an end mill around those features, you have a little bit of that sharp fingers kind of sticking out the edge. It would remove all of those, but still make it fit really good and have a really thin line. So, but that's something you kind of play with whenever you have so many to run. You can kind of just like I was just tweaking it, dialing it in, and I don't know if like I should have labeled them like 1 through 25 because you can kind of see the progression as you're going down the line of this is getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And I think by the time I got to number 10, I pretty much had it dialed in to the point where I was like, okay, this is awesome. So, so it's just stuff like that that you get an opportunity. I'm sure. Do you? Did you have a similar experience when running all your carabiners? Which, by the way, are you done with those?
the carabiners are machined and tumble. The ones that need to be powder coated still need to be powder coated.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I was hoping to get started on that last week, but between Thanksgiving and the prototype of the month stuff, I just never got around to it.
Now, are those? Have you shipped any of those carabiners out yet?
I have not, and this is why I've been able to be lazy on the powder coating, is because my custom packaging is not here yet. It can get
Ah,
here as early as the second and as late as the 20th.
ooh, that's a big window.
It is a big window. Um,
So,
it's it's not too crazy when you sit down and think about it because it's like they have plus or minus a week on their lead times, and then shipping is like plus or minus a week, and
mm-hmm.
suddenly you have a huge window. Um, but I'm hoping it's on the earlier end
Yeah,
because I would like to get them all. My goal is to get them all shipped before Christmas.
yeah,
And if they
that'd be
come
awesome.
on the 20th, that'll be a little bit rough.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to getting mine. I know that much. So I remember what color I ordered, so it'll be a surprise for me. Uh,
it'll,
so
it'll ship at some point, hopefully this
yeah,
year.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Uh, let's see here. What else? So the other thing I was working on last week was I had a lot of parts for a big customer, um, and I got them dropped off on Wednesday last week. And the gentleman who was supposed to look them over was had taken an early Thanksgiving vacation, and so I dropped them off with the shipping and receiving guy. And what's interesting about these parts is they all either get sandblasted or double disc sanded. So, like the sanders you would use on a wood shop have that vibrating, rotating disc. They all get sanded like that, and then they all the serial numbers get marked on them, and that was some of the parts that we needed the laser for. And so when I dropped them off, um, I'm very paranoid about my parts. I want people to like them. And so I was just asking him thousands of questions like, hey, are these good? Like, is this good? You happy with this? Da, 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 da. And basically, what I learned from that interaction was that my parts were probably some of the best parts he's seen come in, and that they have a whole sanding booth, uh, sandblasting booth, and sanding area to finish parts from other vendors. And there's a huge push inside the company to get all that work done at the machine shop instead of just machining the parts. They want the serial numbers on the parts. They want them sanded, and then they send out all the aluminum stuff to be anodized, so I don't have to mess with that. But they said my aluminum parts are ready to send straight to anodizing, and my stainless steel parts, they said, as long as they're happy with the quality, they're going to do some checking of my dimensions and things, but as long as they're happy with that, they said it should be good to just go straight out on the floor. So I was pretty thrilled about that.
So wait, with no sandblasting?
No, no, I sandblasted them. I
Oh,
sandblasted
okay,
them.
okay, okay.
So I sandblasted all the stainless steel parts and then double disc sanded all the aluminum parts. So
What media do you use for sandblasting?
I think it's an 80 grit aluminum oxide.
Oh, the same stuff you use for Cerakote.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I I've always kind of been a one trick pony on sandblasting, and I want to start opening up my media selections.
Well, we have done a lot of sandblasting with glass beads as well.
Okay, that's one of the
Um,
things I want to try.
so it's better on the aluminum. It doesn't do much for your steel stuff. Like it does take it off, but it takes a lot longer. It's not nearly as aggressive. But on your aluminum stuff, it's a lot nicer. Plays nicer with it. It doesn't look like you um, are like ripping it apart like aluminum oxide can at times.
I use a black slag, which one has the advantage of being cheap and readily available, but two, it's like the most aggressive media that you can easily get. I mean, I'm sure you could
Mm-hmm.
get a heavy duty aluminum oxide that would be uh, more heavy duty, but this black slag, like it does a lot to the surface in a very short period of time,
Mm-hmm.
which I generally will sandblast and then tumble. And so I like that because it leaves deep pitting that the tumbling doesn't remove all the way, and so you get more depth to it. And like
Yeah.
for example, I was working on, well, this is a blank coin for those who are watching on video. I was working on some coins, and I engraved them on my mill and then sandblasted them and then tumbled them. And the engraved portion keeps the sandblasted texture, and the portion on the top gets not polished away, but smoothed out.
Gotcha. So it creates a nice contrast.
A nice contrast, yeah.
So, what are you using to engrave? Like, what type of tool is it? Is it like a ball end mill? Is it a an engraving tool?
So, funny story on this one on these coins. I had bought a tapered engraver from Lakeshore Carbide to do these.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I very boldly only bought one double sided tool, and the and I bought one with the teeniest, tiniest little ball on the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I set up the first coin. I set up the first coin. I made my soft draws, put the coin in there, and I knew that there was a little bit of variation in the thickness of these. Nothing wild, but like a couple thou between the thickest and the thinnest.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that that engraving depth was going to be very sensitive to thickness. And
Yep.
so I had a fusion posted probing routine
Mm-hmm.
to set the thickness. So I would put the probe in, it would probe it, all part of the program. I'll take the probe out, put the tool,
Mm-hmm.
well, the ATC would put the tool in, and away it would go. So I had that set up. I put my probe in, touched off the part. It went to go do a tool change, and it dropped the probe. I have no idea
Oh,
why.
oh no.
So I got this on video too, by the way. But like, you know how it's like normally if you have a probe in and you say, change to tool 5, it'll be like, okay, I'm gonna halfway actuate my drawbar, and then it didn't halfway actuate for some reason. I don't know if it was an
It
issue with
just
my
full.
post processor or like a weird bug in PathPilot, but it was just like, okay, bye bye probe. It just
See,
dropped the probe.
that's something that always makes me super nervous because I always hear it start to actuate, and I'm always like
I
trying to
know.
get. And so, like, it's one of those things where I'm like, don't actuate it at all. Just get it into location and let me push the button to drop it. Or because I know it probably does that to lock it so the dogs don't rotate out of position. I said, let me pull the tool out and then you can align yourself and do it. Like change that order of operations a little bit to make me feel more comfortable that my tool like don't even move, like just move it up to the max height and be like, grab the tool and then come down and align the dogs.
Yep.
So
So I don't know what happened there. I don't know if it was a fluke or a weird path pilot bug or something that I did wrong. Because I'm not using the Tormach post, I'm using the zoom speed one. So maybe there was something weird
oh
with that. But I think
zoom
that's the only one I've ever used. So I haven't had that issue
zoom
before.
what is zoom speed? I'm
Zoom speed?
not
Are
familiar.
you not using the zoom speed post?
I'm just using the Fusion default one.
Oh, you're missing out.
So
Except
tell me about
I'm
this.
giving you so much confidence now. But the zoom speed post is a post that some guy who has a store that makes like racing parts or something is put together. XOOM speed. In his post for the Tormux is fantastic. It has all the probing macros in it. It has the ability to set up tool breakage detection with just like one button. I don't know, there's a lot of customization. You can there's just there's a lot of things it can do. It's awesome. If you're using a Tormach, use the zoom speed post, not the Tormach one.
I will have to check that out because I've used the Tormach, I've used the Fusion one, and then I noticed in PathPilot when I started doing in-process probing that it said download this here, and so it had a like in the Tormach PathPilot, it had a subfolder where you can download a Fusion post processor that has the probing routines built into it because the normal one does not. Um, and anytime I do in process probing, I use that one, but it's got a few bugs and things in it. So I use the other one, the Fusion one, if I'm not doing in process probing, and I only use the other one if I need to use in process probing.
Interesting. Yeah, the zoom speed one does in process probing just fine. and a bunch of other things. Like I said, tool breakage detection is one that I use a lot. You can have it retract on M M1's option stops or M1's option stops,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is nice. Oh, it already has the code for like the pass through NC in there, which I believe that the Fusion one does not.
I did notice something the other day. Speaking of probes and thing of post processors, have you ever do you ever use like the force option stop in between operations?
I believe that's the default I have set up. Yeah, with the zoom speed.
But no, I mean like, have you ever like we were doing something where we had two different setups and we had we wanted to have a forced option stop, so we had option stop turned off, so we're not using
Oh,
that.
you mean just a forced pause?
A forced pause,
Yeah,
um, and then we were going to change our setup and then just hit cycle start again and let it finish out. Um, if you're using the same tool, it does the force stop when it goes to do a tool change with the fusion fusion post that's in um, that's the default fusion post for the Tormach.
I don't remember what options the zoom speed has one for it. I know you can set it to put a an option stop, not a force stop, but an option stop between either the tool path or yeah, between the operations or between tools.
Yeah, but see, we didn't want to turn that
But
on
yeah,
because then it would stop at every single one. It's like we wanted it to do all of this other all the work for at the beginning, stop for a second so we can remove some work holding, and then do the rest of it.
I have
Um,
only done that by inserting a manual NC into my code.
well, that's what we did, but we did that as a forced stop. But it would only add that forced stop at the bottom of the. That's the weird
Oh,
part.
that's a post bug. Yeah, that's a post bug.
Yeah, it's because it would like it would add it, but like we were using the same tool, we just had it stop in the middle of that tool, and then we were going to do some stuff, and then it was going to go back in with the same tool. But it would do that, but then it would try to use the next tool, and then it would stop afterwards
Yeah, I've never
with
seen that.
with
That's
with our
post bug.
options with our option stop turned off. So
Um, oh, the other nice thing about the zoom speed, if you're doing a force stop, you can tell it like there's different retract options. So you can say go to G30, go or just retract Z, or go to XY coordinates, or
mhm.
you have all those options. Because
Yeah,
otherwise, it'll stop like right above your part.
yeah. Now, did you update PathPilot to the latest version recently?
Um, I think I still need to. I didn't do it when I was running the carabiners because my poor mill stayed on for like 3 days or 3 weeks straight, but
Okay.
I haven't
I
yet.
They just came out with a new update, and I just updated it on mine. Um, and it hasn't changed a lot, but there was two things that I immediately noticed. Um, do you use find center very often? Like
The
where
probing
it
routine?
yeah, where it goes around the box.
Oh, constantly.
Okay. Well, in the latest update, it tells you the width and height of your box after it's done probing.
Hasn't it? Hasn't it always done that?
If it has, I haven't noticed it. Does yours? What version of?
Mine does that.
Oh well,
Um,
I guess I haven't updated in a while because mine
okay,
didn't
yeah.
do
Say
that.
mine right now is telling me to update, but it's done that.
Okay, because mine it didn't used to output the height and width of the box. That has just now something that I've seen. And when I do a tool change, it tells me what tool it's putting away and what tool it's fixing to grab. So
Huh.
instead of just telling me the
I
tool
don't know if
number,
mine
it
does
tells me
that.
instead of telling me the tool numbers, it tells me the description. So it's be like whatever I have in my description on my offsets page. If I have like half-inch tool, 3 flute with 3 thou radius, it puts that whole description up. Says we're removing this tool and putting this tool in, and puts the two tools and says, "Are you wanting to do this?" It's like, "Yes, I am," and I can actually see the tool. So that's kind of nice.
I have never once typed in the description of my tool into my offsets page.
Oh,
Is
then
that
you won't see
is that a
that.
thing people do?
Oh yeah, I have about 135 tools in my description page. In um yeah, in my offsets.
Interesting.
So
I've always just relied on my Fusion library, but that makes sense.
yeah, so we have that, and the reason we did that was because we have more than 12 tool holders, and if we have a tool that's set up offline, we 3D printed little tags that go over it, and we put the tool number on it. And so if we're switching jobs, like because we go between aluminum and stainless a lot, um, so we usually have a full set of tools set up for either or. Um, and when we're putting them in, we'll just put the tool number on them. But the problem is like I said, we have close to 130 different uh, tooling that we've used, and it's really bad with the drills and taps. That's part of the reason it's so big. It's because of drills and taps, because we do a lot of different drills and tap sizes, um, and so we just keep adding the numbers, and it just keeps growing over time. And we have in all the descriptions because sometimes if we're like looking at a tool number, what size is this? Well, I can go pull it up in Fusion, but if I'm right next to the mill, I can just go to the offset page, find it there, and go, oh, this is this size. So let me go put it away and grab a different one, type deal.
Makes sense. I've just never bothered. I guess I do the same thing where I have more tool holders than pockets, but I don't know. I've always used the same numbers in my Fusion library. They've even carried over since I think my Pocket NC. So a lot of the tools were originally built for my Pocket NC, and I've just shifted them over in the same library.
So when you take a tool out of the machine, do you just know which tool it is?
I take a paint marker and I write on the collet nut or the tool holder itself the number.
Okay, but what happens if you put a different tool in that holder? Or does that tool holder only have one tool ever in it?
If if I take out the tool, I take a little acetone and I wipe off the number.
Oh wow, that sounds like a lot of work.
It's really easy. It just takes 2 seconds to wipe it off. But yes, a tag would be easier.
No, well, I mean, I just yeah. What I mean by that is not having the, well, I don't know. Maybe if it works, it works. So we're
It
different.
works.
I guess for us, the reason we need to do that is because there's two of us, and it's a lot harder to recognize tools that you did not set up yourself. So if I'm using the machine and then Weston comes behind me and needs to use it, and he's trying to set up tools, and he's trying to look at tools that are um, in the bin, or trying to look at the tools that are in the turret, and he's trying to see what tooling is set up for whatever project he's working on, it's much easier to go to the offset page and go, okay, there's that tool, there's that tool, there's that tool, instead of going walking back and forth between Fusion and the machine trying to figure out tool numbers and which size is this one.
Well, my secret is that four tools will cover about 98% of all of the machining I do.
Yeah, lucky
So
you.
that's what happens when you design your own products.
Yeah,
Is I only really put tools in my ATC if I am machining fixtures. That's where weird tools come in. But basically, I have like a couple. I have like two 3/16 inch tools that I use a lot on my steel stuff, and then I have like a my 3/8 inch aluminum tool. I have a 1/4 inch aluminum tool, and well, that covers a lot of my products right there.
yeah, we have a bunch of tools. Some of them are specialty tools. A lot of them are to get in, like we'll accept a job and it needs a long reach of a weird size, and so we get a lot of odds and ends, and then tons of drill bits and taps. We have a lot of those because it seems like every size on the drill chart and tap chart we've had to run at some point.
Yeah, I thread mill just about everything I can. I do finally now have a 1/4 20 tap drill and tap set up because I'd started using those enough where it was worth it going with the drill and tap over thread milling. But
Yeah.
I have a thread mill that'll do like number 6 to 1/4 20 or number 8 to 1/4 20, and that
Yeah.
covers the vast majority of threads I need to make. And then I have one that's like number 6 to number 2 or M3 or something.
Yeah.
It's probably M3 to number 6.
Yeah. And I would do more thread milling, and I want to do more thread milling. It's just um if you're getting a thread mill to do a specific size, like 3/8 by what is it, 3/8 by 16 or quarter 20, and it has more than one thread, then they're going to be more expensive than a normal tap. And if you get just a single point, then it's going to take a lot more time than running just a quick drill tap. And when we're already slow on our machine for job shop stuff compared to normal machine shops, adding thread milling adds quite a bit of time because it takes a process that's like sub 30 seconds per part, and we'll stretch it out, or sub 30 seconds per hole, and make it significantly longer.
Yeah. And that's just the difference between production machining and
Yeah.
whatever I do. I'm not
Yeah.
doing large quantities. So if it takes it 4 minutes to thread one hole, it's fine.
Yeah.
But okay, 4 minutes is a little long. But if it takes
Yeah.
a minute versus 12 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's we've always tried to, since the inception of the company, we've always tried to go as fast as we can on our Tormach. Um, and it's kind of ironic because I'm still finding ways today to go faster than um, I thought possible. And I'm really excited about that kind of stuff. Like, uh, I had a fun game trying to optimize your parts, trying to inch, like trying to get every second of wasted motion out of my machine. Um, and I just enjoy that optimization challenge. And on the Tormach, it pays you dividends because it's a slower machine. So like when I'm using the Haas at the school, and it's bouncing around the part doing all this stuff, it's really fast. And so like a little bit of wasted motion in those movements isn't nearly as bad as like when I watch the Tormach and then it's like just slowly moving from one location to the next. It's like, okay, how can I reduce this jumping around? How can I get it to stay in one location, not lift up the tool and then replunge? Um, but
My first mill had 18 inches per minute rapids.
oh, oh,
It was that shoreline. And I eventually got that up more with some different stepper motors. What it came with were awful. But yeah, when I first got it, it rapided at 18 inches a minute.
yeah. And honestly, 300 inches a minute in the Tormach is fast on smaller parts. Like it'll still catch you off guard. But then you move up to a machine like our lathe is 1100 inches a minute. And if I've used the lathe a bunch for several days and I go over to the Tormach, I'm just like, come on, let's go. It's so slow. But it's it's been a good machine. I will probably hold on to that machine for the length of the business. Like I'll probably never get rid of that Tormach just for sentimental reasons.
Yeah.
But
And I mean, if your business outgrows it, it can always go in your garage. Like
yeah,
you got to
yeah.
go tinker at home.
Oh, I've definitely thought that like if I ever had to get rid of the Tormach, it may or may not end up at my or my cousin's house.
Yeah.
So, because there's been many times where I've been like, man, it'd be great just to have it out in the garage. Like, if I want to do a little home project and be like, ooh, I've got to make, something for my office or whatever. It'd just be awesome to go out in the garage and make it. So,
All right. So these coins, I never finished my story on these. There's a lot of interesting things going on.
mm-hmm,
One is an interesting side note. This is the first time I've put something in my prototype of the month box that I haven't shown people beforehand
mm-hmm,
because I want to start including a little bit of a surprise to make it more interesting and exciting.
mm-hmm.
So I gave him a surprise coin. But did we talk about the probe on here, or was that beforehand?
Um, I honestly do not remember.
I don't remember. Sorry if this is a repeat, people. But I was doing these. Did we?
You did talk about dropping the probe
Okay,
in
I
the
did talk about. Okay, I'm
yeah,
very
because
tired, by the way.
we were talking about post processors and that's
Okay, okay, okay.
yeah.
Um, so I broke that probe, which meant that I didn't, and I actually have a spare probe tip, but
Mhm.
it was like it did probe before falling. So I had my work coordinate system for the first one set up, and I was like, oh, it'll be fine going forwards. And the so I ran the engraving tool,
Mhm.
and it engraved about half of it, and it kind of slowly tapered out going to the other side. And I went,
Yeah.
huh, my part must be at an angle. Um,
It,
because it
it,
was only
it,
getting half of it. And then I looked at the tool,
oh.
and the tool was just like completely gone.
Oh
Um,
no.
so it wasn't that my part was at an angle; it was that my tool was slowly being eaten away. And so I turned it
Ah.
over and tried different speeds and feeds, and it got farther, but it still died. And it was like, well, my engraving tool is gone now. And
So you said you got that from Lakeshore Carbide.
yeah,
Do you follow Lakeshore Carbide speeds and feeds? Like, how do you set up your tools?
sometimes in the past I have used Proven Cut, which is where most of my recipes have come from. I don't have a subscription anymore. The Lakeshore Carbide speeds and feeds are like they give you a pretty wild range.
If you're using the same, because I think I've used almost the exact same engraver that you use, because I used them all on the aluminum card cases. It was really slow. If you read that, because we had one that was like a 60-degree taper with a 64th ball on the end.
Okay,
Um,
it's about the
and
same. I think mine was a little bit smaller, but
yeah, but if you read that, if you read the literature on it, you're only supposed to go down like 5 thou or less at a time, and the speeds and feeds are like ridiculously slow.
yes. And I think that's pretty much what I did though.
Oh, okay. Just
But
checking.
I don't know.
Is
I broke them. I'm not really used to stainless, which is part of it, I'm sure.
that's
Uh,
because and that's 304, by the way. I don't
yes.
know if you okay. I'm just making sure you remember that. Um, because that tool I think is the reason that my spindles are or my bearings on my machine are so loud, because I ran that thing at 10,000 RPM for literally 4 or 5 hours at a time engraving, um, because it was just so slow, and I had to take such shallow passes. It was. I probably should have tried to speed it up until I started breaking them, honestly, because I was going off of their recommendations. But yeah.
Well, so after that tool broke, I switched to a 1/16th ball nose, and promptly broke that. I don't, I yeah, I don't know what happened with that one, but it promptly broke. And so then I was left with all I had were 1/16th inch four flutes, regular ends, and I broke like two of those playing around with speeds and feeds, and then finally I got it kind of sorted out, and the tool after that lasted for 16, 20 coins. But yeah, it took me some tools to figure that out, and I it still feels like I'm taking really really whatever the opposite of aggressive is cuts. Like they feel
Conservative.
really conservative. Thank you. I was gonna say
Yeah.
passive, but that's not the right word.
That
Yeah, I
that
still
is
feel like I'm taking really conservative cuts, but I don't know.
so. Have you primarily used 304 stainless, or have you machined much stainless?
The vast majority of the stainless machining I have done has been in 17.4.
17.4. Okay. Well, I've done very little 17.4, but I've done a lot of 303 and a lot of 304. And there is a major difference between 303 and 304. Um, so when I'm turning 304 parts on my lathe, I have to go probably a third of the speed that I would do in 303. Oh, and if I go any faster, I start breaking tools uh, or heating up the stainless to the point where it work hardens, and then I break tools. Um,
Okay, so 16th inch end mill slotting. Like what would your feeds and speeds be? Just like eyeballing it.
well, I'll just pull it up real quick because I got all that saved. But if I remember correctly, with our 16th inch end mill, um, it's going to be under a thou per tooth. I want to say like half a thou per tooth at um, what would it be? I'm getting it pulled up here, but I want to say not quite 10,000 RPMs. I want to say like 7,000 RPMs,
Oh, really?
maybe less. It might be a lot less than that actually.
Okay, that might
Um,
be part of it because I was running max. It's only like
and
160 surface feet.
yeah, that sounds about right. Around 100 to usually it's under 200 surface footage in in 304. Get my tool library pulled up here. Manufacturing. Where's
But
my now?
I was
I have. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
I was doing 5 thou step downs to not break it, and then later I pushed that up to 6 or 7 thou step downs.
Oh, you can go bigger step downs than that for sure.
My
It's
broken end mills beg to differ,
yeah.
and I'm not. Part of it may be the tool path I was using because it was a trace tool path, and um, there's lots of plunges, and I assume that's where my tool was breaking.
Oh, I see what I'm in. Hang on here. That makes sense. I'm in my JB in my teaching class library. I'm like, where's my 116th? It is not here. I got to switch back over to my work side.
But I think it was breaking on the plunges down because the trace tool path is not very considerate of your tool.
No, it is not.
And I even turned on lead ins, but I had to give them a really small radius. I think I gave it like a 10th thou radius, which still left artifacts in my part, but kept me from breaking tools as much.
Yeah, plunging kills end mills. Let's see here. In stainless, at least they do.
I mean, in
Um,
most things.
yeah. No, I was running 10,000. Okay, so I was running uh 45 tenths as my feed per tooth at 100,000 or not 100,000, 10,000 RPM. Add an extra zero. So I was 163 um, SFM.
Okay, so we were at the same SFN.
But my depth, my cutting depth on that is an eighth inch.
Not for slotting, though.
For slotting, it was a 32nd. So 31 thou.
Huh. Yeah, see, so I was doing the recipe that I found that ended up working was 2.5 tenths feet per tooth, 10K RPM, which is 163 surface feet. But yeah, only 2.5 tenths and a
What
step down of 6 thou.
what brand of end mill do you have?
They're Lake Shores.
Okay, I have the Kennametal ones.
Okay.
So we did the Titans of CNC course when we first got our machines,
Mm-hmm.
and we that's the starter tool set that we got, and it was the end mill that came in that starter set. It's a really good end mill. That 1/16th.
I yeah, so I eventually got a recipe that worked, but like I panicked as soon as it happened, and I ordered 4 more double sided 1/16th ball mill from McMaster, and they actually are Kyocera or SGS that came in, which I'm kind of excited to try out because I just found out that I have a distributor of theirs within I don't know 5 miles of my house.
So switching over to the topic of tooling, are you brand loyal to any particular type, or do you just go on MSC or something and just find the cheapest tool? Like, what's your style of picking out tooling?
I am lazy loyal to Lakeshore Carbide
Okay.
because, like, I know their catalog. I can just order it and it shows up. I don't have to talk to people. And plus, back when I had Proven Cut, they had a lot of speeds and feeds recipes for my machine with that tooling. All they're ready to go. You can, if you have Proven Cut, you can copy paste the a like set up toolpath template like straight into your Fusion file.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
That's
so
nice.
it was just so quick and easy. And plus, Lakeshore Carbide's cheap, which is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I've been less happy with their tools for steel though. Their aluminum tools are fantastic, but their steel tools, I don't know. I feel like there's room for improvement on. I haven't taken that time to go find them.
I think I'm about to say something that's probably going to sound really bad, but I don't think I've ever used a Lakeshore Carbide anything.
I mean, they're fine. Like, I'm never gonna say that they're the best tooling thing out there, but like, they're
Mm-mm.
cheap, they're easy, and they're pretty good.
Yeah. I was going to get some Lakeshore Carbide stuff until I found Haas Tooling.
Mm.
Um, and Haas Tooling, like, I can get stuff for like 1/16 or 1/8 inch tools for under around $10 a tool, for steel and stainless, and they cut really well. Um,
Yeah, Lakeshore for like a 16th or an eighth inch tool. I mean, you're talking 8-10 bucks.
yeah, it's very similar price. But I've been very. We got into the Haas tooling, um, and we've been very happy with it so far. It's served us very well. And usually, if Haas tooling doesn't cut it, then I'll look at Kennametal or Harvey. Those are Harvey, and if I want really nice aluminum finishes, Helical, I'll look at them. Um, but and MSC, I've been getting a lot on MSC, and they just have all sorts of stuff. So sometimes I'll go in there and try to find name brand stuff super cheap, and I have a variety of different brands that I use there, depending on what I'm getting.
Yeah, I would start using more of this. Like, I probably will start using more of this the SGS stuff, the Kyocera, because their stuff is really good. And like I said, I have a distributor close to me.
Was it Sumitomo? I think they have some really good stuff, at least on the lathe side. Um, like I was using I've really liked the Haas tooling on the mill side. On the lathe side, it's been really good, but we were during turning some aluminum parts, and I was getting just horrible surface finish with the Haas branded stuff. And so I switched over to Sumitomo, and it was a night and day difference. It was like cutting with a hot knife through butter. The finish on it was fantastic. So,
Ooh,
but
I did finally get inserts for my face mill.
oh, nice.
Yeah. Um, Tormach sent me one of their like 38 millimeter face mill
Mm-hmm.
like a year ago because I helped them with like basically what was it? It was installing an outlet for the fog so that you can run the fog buster and coolant at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have like a instruction manual for that process that they could send to people. And
Mm-hmm.
I was doing it on my machine, and they sent me the parts, and we're like we'll send you the parts if you take pictures along the way and send them to us. So like I took pictures going throughout the whole process, and they sent me the parts to do it, and then also that face mill. But they didn't send me inserts with the face mill, and the inserts cost more than the face mill.
So when you say face mill, is it the fly cutter?
No, the or shell mill was probably the better term.
Like the shear hog?
No, the this is great podcasting.
Oh,
This guy, it's 38 millimeter, four inserts.
okay.
What would you call this? A shell mill? Face mill?
Yeah, that's a shell mill. That's a
Are
shell
shell
mill.
mills and face mills the same thing? Like just different terms for the same thing, or are they like slightly different? They look the same, but are they?
I feel like today they're interchangeable, but I'm wondering if shell mills are when insert tooling first started coming out, and face mills were like when they were solid and large, and when they started switching to. I don't know if this is true. I could be completely talking out my butt here, but I'm guessing it's something along those lines where shell mills, because of replaceable inserts, they had to differentiate themselves from like face mill, which it sounds more like just a giant mill for facing purposes. It would be
I wondered if it
complete.
was like face mills. You can only take like a low depth of cut facing pass, and shell mills can side cut better. But that was my guess.
That that could also be it. That
I mean, if
honestly
I said it
probably makes more
confidently,
sense. Honestly,
someone would believe me. But I really don't know.
yeah, no, that honestly is probably it. That makes a heck of a lot more sense than what I'm talking about.
But
So
I don't know. I haven't used one of these before. I've used the shear hog, um, and I liked the shear hog until it just ripped a part out of a vise and threw it across the mill violently, and like then I was a little bit scared of it, and I didn't use it again. Um, but
we 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 got one because we thought it would be better at removing material than some of our other tooling, but it wasn't. The cubic feet per minute, whatever material removal rate (MRR), um, it wasn't any better. We couldn't get it up any higher, and it was so much louder.
so I had one on my old Tormach, and those are RPM limited, but they have a lot more torque.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it made a lot more sense on those machines.
See, this is what I've been trying to figure this out because I remember talking to you about this back in the day. Um, because John Saunders had a video a long time ago. Well, I say a long time ago, it was several years back, where he was able to get close to 6 cubic inches per minute removal rate with the shear hog in the Tormach, and it was on one of the older machines with a uh, and whenever I have tried to get my most material removal rate, I can only get up to about 3.5, maybe 4, and then I run out of power. And I'm sticking at the 6,000 RPM where I have my most power in the machine. So,
You have the most torque, you don't have the most power.
well, the most torque, yeah. But that's kind of
Uh,
where the torque and the horsepower area under the graph is the highest. It's around 6,000.
yeah, I used that same recipe when I had proven cut on my old machine, and like it works, but I haven't tried it on my MX.
Yeah, I'd be curious because I feel like the old machines probably had more torque because they were slower RPM max.
Yeah, I think it's the same motor or a similar motor, but they
Yeah,
were totally
you're
different.
exactly, and that's where I
Yeah,
think the difference comes in. And because I run out of torque and it'll just um you can hear the RP like I've gotten it dialed in so much that you can just hear the RPM slowly start going down, and like you can just hear it like it starts off slow where it's just barely coming down, and you're like, okay, the pitch is subtly changing, and then it falls off a cliff. Um, so like I've worked all the way up to that line several times, trying to do test cuts and trying to figure out where do I, where does it, what can I get up to, and I've tried different heights, or different depths of cut versus widths of cut versus feed per tooth, like just playing with all those different values, going at a slider deeper depth, but a lesser width of cut at a higher feed per tooth. Like I've just messed around with those a bunch, and I cannot get it above about 3.5 reliably.
have you tried a roughing it?
Yes.
Okay, say because the and I don't actually know what my removal rate is, but just by comparing different tool paths, I know that my best material removal rate has been with the Lakeshore Carbide aluminum specific roughing tool,
Yeah.
and that just
Now,
does a great job of eating aluminum.
I say that, but I need to try um something that, like, because the rougher that I've been using, it doesn't have very deep valleys in between the teeth, and so it creates separation, but the chips are still kind of connected. And so maybe I need to switch up and try something that actually has a bigger. Um,
Try the Lakeshore TAS. It stands for, I
okay,
believe, the aluminum shredder.
okay,
Um, and it's great. You can ramp at a super steep angle, which
mm,
removes a lot of the cycle time.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I think I was ramping at like an 8-degree angle.
yeah. Wow, that's a
Yeah,
lot. There
it's
was
terrifying to watch.
there was a podcast I was listening to um, on with intolerance, and they were talking about ramping end mills.
Mm-hmm.
There was an end mill that company came out with. I think they called it the dive mill, and
Yeah,
it could ramp in at like 30 degrees or something
yeah,
crazy like that.
basically a plunge.
Yeah, basically a plunge, and it was just like, goodness. Yeah,
Yeah, that was probably, is it Fraser? Fraser? I
I
think it
think
was
so.
probably them.
Yeah, because I thought about that because, like, for the idea being that we drill a lot of holes. If we can plunge an end mill and interpolate the size of the hole, we can have less tools in our machine and just plunge plunge mill out everything instead of drilling it.
Yeah, I was getting pretty steep angles with the Lakeshore tools. I like those a lot. And again, the steep angle cuts down a lot on cycle time
Significantly.
because it takes a long time to ramp in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, oh, something fun that we did today while I'm thinking about it. Um, we are working on a project where we're having to form some sheet metal, and so we made our own dies today
Nice.
and tested them out, and they actually worked really good.
Just milled
So,
out of steel
mhm.
and put in like an arbor press or
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
cool.
So
Is it like a V die or is it a like a
it's a
forming die?
half circle forming die. And then tomorrow we're gonna make a forming die where it's a half circle, but some of the edges get flared out. So it's gonna be like forming it with different types of shapes. And I'm nervous to see how well that actually turns out because it could be a lot
Now
of fun work.
I have 3D printed these before, and for like a legit, I don't know what they are, 100-ton press brake or whatever. Like we've
Hmm.
actually used at my old job, we had a weirdo thing, and we used 3D printed, uh, not soft jaws, forming dies, and it
Yeah,
worked super well.
yeah. So I think I first saw that on Stuff Made Here. He had a whole video series on 3D printed forming dies for sheet metal, and I thought about doing that, but the metal that we got from McMaster was like under $10 for this. So it's just like we'll just machine it out. Like it's honestly much faster on the CNC machine to just machine it out, and the material cost is low enough that it's not that big. These are small parts. These are like really tiny parts, so it doesn't take much.
Yeah,
Um, if
and
they were bigger,
I was just doing a custom radius. It was actually for a shelf for Whole Foods on their
oh, okay.
checkout counter, and they had a like edge banding is the best word I could think of that kind of
Hmm.
went around the sides, and it was a weirdo radius, and so we 3D printed the dies for it,
That's really cool.
and it worked well.
I I've wanted to try that, and I was going to try it on this project, but we just decided to machine it because we had the material and
Yeah,
wasn't going to take that long.
yeah,
So
and that was just out of PLA. It wasn't even resin or anything.
yeah, no, it's I've watched a lot of pressing videos with 3D prints, and they work really well because everything's in compression. Um,
Exactly.
so it's surprising what you can get away with on 3D prints on that stuff. So let's see here. I don't think I have anything else. Um, oh, I do have one thing. Um, we are potentially looking at a job, and I'm really hoping we get it, where we would be laser engraving between 20 to 50 plates a week every week for a year or two.
That's awesome.
Uh, and if we get this job, we will most definitely be either getting a second laser or designing a way to automate the laser that we have so that it can run after hours when we're not there. Um, and I'm really hoping we get it because it would be um, a consistent revenue stream of a couple $100 a week that would pay dividends, I think, in the long run of the business because
Yep.
cash flow is king. And I want to keep finding small things that are a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there on a weekly reoccurring basis because that'll add up over time. And if I can get, 10 to 20 little items like that that are just, hey, we just need, a couple of these every week. Um, Before long, we'll have a very strong foundation.
Yep. Yeah, having that nice reoccurring revenue is fantastic. It's like
Yeah.
my Patreon. It's like I basically pre-sold,
Yeah.
16 products every month. Uh, it's just a nice little thing, and it's like,
It,
oh,
it,
I've
it,
sold 16, so I'll make 24, and the
yeah.
Patrons will basically pay for the extras.
I remember when we first talked about that. I was a little bit of a Debbie Downer on that whole idea, but I really like it for the consistency and the prototyping aspect of it. Like it makes a lot of sense. So if we did
And
more products, I would definitely be looking into that a little harder.
I mean, it's not. I should say for 30, like I'm charging $30 a month. That includes shipping. Like it's not wildly profitable.
No,
um,
no,
like
but
this month, I most certainly lost money, but
yes. But here's the deal. Um, the amount of money that we've lost to prototyping things that never end up making it to market or making money back on it has significantly slowed down the amount of products that we have tried to bring to market. So we're a lot carefuler, more careful, and a lot more selective of what we actually prototype and make because of that. Because we have so much money still tied up in a lot of stuff that we've pre-made that hasn't sold out. So um,
I think though I think the lesson here is like 90% of everything designed and like presented as a product will be a flop. And it doesn't matter if you put $1 million into R&D or if you put $10. Like that 90% still holds fairly true.
yeah,
And the lesson is do it for $10 the first time. And if it works, then you can invest more time.
not only that, but we kept it so close to the chest because we were worried about it. Which it's your when it's your first project, you get that type of paranoia. But the people that are the most successful are the ones that are like sketching stuff up and being like, "Hey, Instagram, what do you think of this?" And it's like low reaction. Okay. Hey, Instagram, what do you think of this? High reaction. Okay, I'm gonna start making it.
Yes,
So
it's like the aluminum trays that paid for, gosh, a lot of things. And I just made one day for myself, and people liked it, so I made some more. And people liked it, I made some more.
yeah,
Um, but like those made more than my parametric pry bars, and I spent a long time on my parametric pry bars, like
yeah,
hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and probably thousands of dollars in material to get those working well.
mm-hmm.
And like they're fine, like they weren't a failure, but like the trays that I spent 2 minutes on and some scrap material, those made me three times
Much
more than the
more.
pry bars did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's funny and frustrating how that works out. Um, and the experience is worth more than like if you were to go spend that amount of money, you'd probably get a semester, maybe two's worth at a college of like a class or two. Um, and it was well worth it in the educational sense of that whole. deal. Like I am a much better machinist. I understand how to make much better stuff because of all the R&D that we did on that product. So,
Well, and I imagine a lot of your costs and a lot of your problems were due to the fact that you were sending things out for ano. Because to do anodization, one, it costs money.
mm-hmm.
Two, it forces you into a reasonable sized batch.
Yeah,
And like then there's a whole bunch of waiting and all that stuff involved.
yeah,
Whereas the reason I do all of my finishing in house is because I can make one of something and that's economic.
yes, yeah. Well, considering that we spent on a lot of our products more in anodizing than we did in the material cost, considerably more. Um, it's just, yeah, anodizing definitely bit us in the butt hard on that one. Um, especially because we thought we had it all figured out, and then we sent a really large batch, and then got hit with like a major increase in anodizing cost overnight.
With bigger batch,
Yeah, and um, and we haven't sent anything to that anodizer um, since this whole ordeal. This was our first anodizer that we dealt with, who did good work. But I'm kind of glad it didn't work out because I've started reaching out to more people that are on like Instagram, and I haven't like with the first anodizer he did good work, but he was always calling and complaining about my parts and wanting me to change them. And I've sent the same parts to a bunch of different anodizers, and I haven't heard a peep, and they've come back perfect.
interesting.
And so it was just like that test tells me that he didn't have the fixturing needed to run these parts, and he didn't want to invest in fixturing. He wanted me to change my part to match his fixturing. Um, and so, in that sense, I'm much happier now. So,
Now I know you were talking about DLC a while ago. Have you actually ever
mhm.
sent parts out to DLC or
I haven't had the opportunity yet. I We were going to do a project that was going to get sent out, and then at the last minute, the person kind of changed up, and he ended up sending it out, so we didn't. Um, so he just took care of that on his own. And I want to see the finished product back, but I haven't had an opportunity to talk to him since. Um, and I have been looking for a project that I can send out to be DLC, but everything that we've had so far, um, we haven't really done anything of our own because we've been so busy with everything else that we haven't had anything that we can send out to be DLC coded. So
I I was looking at my tape measures the other day and going, I want a DLC tape measure. It'd be so cool. It'd be a good finish for him too.
it would be. Actually, would be really cool, like a golden tape measure.
Yes.
That'd be sick.
I
Uh,
I was
and
thinking more like the black, but
I was gonna say the black would look cool too. Um, but like I always see people that do like the DLC guns in solid gold, and it's never struck a chord with me. But I think I would do it just once, just to because just to have one. Like it'd be one of those things that like makes no sense. I am not a super chrome gold plated stuff, but I kind of want to do it just to see it at least once.
I if I if this was possible for a reasonable price, what I would love is a black um like the majority of the tape measure to be black, that black DLC coating, and then the engraving to be gold.
Oh, that'd be cool. See, I don't know.
Though now that I'm thinking about it, I don't use black in my branding, so maybe not. But
I don't know. I think it'd look cool. Or if you did black with orange engraving, or orange engraving, or orange with a black, uh,
that would be better.
like a
But I don't
like solid.
do orange DLC. Does orange DLC exist?
I don't know if orange DLC exists. I know orange anodizing does,
Yeah,
but I don't know about orange DLC.
I hate anodizing though. So
Yeah, orange Cerakote exists.
orange Cerakote. I think Cerakote's probably going to be the way.
Yeah, Yeah,
I'm still torn on how to do these.
I might have to do a test, see what we can do, because it'd be interesting to do solid orange and then have the engraving in there, and then come back um, with a black fill, and then wipe it to leave the black in the. I have to see how well that works.
I I kind of think I still want them to look aluminum. I think that's the key. If you have if there's a plastic version of something and you make a metal version of that something, it should look like metal. Because as soon as you powder coat it or Cerakote it, it's just going to look plastic again.
If you anodize it, though, it still looks metal.
Yeah, but anodizing's ugly. I hate anodizing. The
What
colors
is?
aren't saturated enough.
Uh,
If I want it
well,
to look like a cheap race car part from China, then sure.
do,
But
do you still have my the aluminum playing card case that we sent you?
yeah, I use it to store my SD cards in.
Does that look bad to you?
I mean, it would be cooler if it was Cerakote.
It would be cooler.
I will be the first to admit that this is a preference thing. The anodizing job on this is awesome, um, but I don't like things that are halfway. Like it looks halfway metal and halfway colored. Like go all the way, go all the way metal or all the way orange. Again,
Hmm.
personal preference though. I like that.
Yeah, I
That's
don't know.
the design the everything brand. Saturated color.
I, yeah, I don't know if you can get saturated colors and still have it look metal though. I don't know how that would. I don't know how that would look.
You
I don't know.
don't
I don't.
exactly. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And so you either make it look like metal or not.
Hmm.
So what I was thinking is there is a Cerakote specifically designed to keep aluminum looking aluminum-y, and I would probably do that one over the whole thing, and then a black or other colored fill.
Yeah. If you just had the fill be one color, and then had it wiped and then do a clear over everything, you could do that.
That's I think that's what I'm thinking right now.
You could do orange and blue to be your two different colors.
Oh, except it'd be aluminum and blue or aluminum and orange.
Yeah, but it'd be like if you did one side one color, one side the other.
It needs that balance.
Yeah. Yeah, the aluminum's so bright that you really need like a darker color. It looks better contrasted with a darker color, and orange in some oranges and some like you'd have to get like a dark orange and a dark blue. That could look okay.
Or if I wanted two colors, I could have so like this artwork is being generated algorithmically. I could have like basically the algorithm work in two passes, and you run it once, Cerakote it blue, run it again, Cerakote orange over that blue, and so there's like two colors intertwined and interweaved. I mean, it's
Yeah,
a processing headache,
yeah. I was
but
gonna
it's
say
possible.
you can do that. I will give you the Cerakote equipment, and you can
I
go to
have the
town.
Cerakote equipment.
Yeah, yeah. I am not rejigging that because one, I'm gonna make as soon as I make two of these uniquely generated uh, algorithm generated tape measures. I know I'm going to stick the wrong algorithm tape measure in the holder because it's going to be 100 different programs times whatever. And I'm going to stick it in there and it's going to rerun it and it's going to be all over the place.
Oh, it won't matter though because they'll all work together. If that
No,
makes
no,
sense.
no, no, no. Like it's different paths on the inside, right? Because
Um,
that's
so
the whole point of.
basically, there'd be like an A path for orange and a B path for blue, but the A and the B path wouldn't need to be related to each other. So I could have 100 A paths and 100 B paths.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's not like okay, okay. It's like the pipe screensaver.
Yes, exactly. It was exactly like that.
I got you now. Okay, I was thinking like you do one path and then you like widen it and then do another one
That
like
would be
where it's
cool
like
too.
where it's like an outline of it. It's like I cannot do that because I know that if I try to pick it up and try to stick it back in there, if it's off at all, it would look horrible.
Yeah. Now I do need to get. It's like you would not be engraving these in Fusion, and that's where my artwork currently exists. I did these, which this is just hardboard. That's never going to show up with video compression. This is a coaster with a different generative design pattern on
Mm-hmm.
it. But this was generated as an SVG using a website where I just lightly modified their code. And I'd probably have to do that for you. But making that
For the
efficient might be a pain for you to
for
laser.
yeah
Actually, I can export a DXF from Fusion automatically.
yeah.
It'd
Then I
be
have to cut.
the what? Sorry, go on.
It'd be the same circle problem you're dealing with right now with your trace.
Um, yes, it would, but it would be exported as a DXF and done in your laser.
Yeah,
I can figure out the circle problem.
yeah. Which mm, we haven't talked about that, have we yet?
No, we have not. But it's getting late, so maybe we just leave a cliffhanger and we can address it in the next episode, or we can
we can.
forget about it and make people angry at us.
I think we can summarize it really quick, and then people can comment back and get to us, and maybe we'll hear something on some DMs from people that listen to our podcast.
Okay.
Um,
All
so quick summary. Um,
so quick
it,
summary. I am engraving these round coins with generative art. So art that is um, generated via random numbers inside Fusion 360 in an API plugin. The problem I have is the algorithm that I put together generates art in a square, and this is a round coin. And for the life of me, I could not figure out how to get it to trim the artwork to a circle instead of to that square. And the way I solved that was by air cutting for everywhere that's not on the coin itself. So my my toolpath just went off the side of the coin.
and
Um,
and and for all of you keyboard warriors who are typing furiously away about using a contour um, section to section it off or using bounding boxes, this is the trace toolpath, which is the other hiccup in this.
yeah, so the trace toolpath does not let you input a toolpath boundary. It just follows your sketch exactly. Um, and so right now my artwork is just generating a sketch. I went down a whole rabbit hole of trying to do a thin extrude to extrude that sketch out because my it's just center lines. It's just center lines on a in a pattern, and so to make those into rectangles instead of center lines, so you can use other tool paths. I tried using the thin extrude method through the API. Except here's the problem with that: when they coded the thin extrude tool, the thin extrude API command, they made it a branch of the regular extrude API command because like the regular extrude came first, and then there was the thin extrude. The regular extrude toolpath has or command has a limit where you have to have a closed profile, like a normal
Mm-hmm.
extrude. Thin extrudes do not require closed profile. You can do it with an open profile, like I have. I have an open profile. But whenever they coded the API code for it, they just didn't change that setting. So it only extrudes the portions of my sketch that are closed profiles and leaves 99% of it unextruded.
Yeah. Frustrating.
Yeah. There's one workaround that I've looked into a little bit where basically it extrudes every line as a new body. And then my CAD model all of a sudden has, with my current settings, I think it would be like 15 squared new bodies in it,
Mhm.
which is problematic. But then also, it doesn't extrude the corners correctly.
Yeah.
So,
If you had SolidWorks, I would suggest circle and then just trim it. But I've used the Fusion trim, and it is slower than molasses with high sketch features, sketch lines. Um, SolidWorks, I feel like when you do a circle and then you trim around it, it's you just drag around the circle and it'll cut everything away, and it's really fast. Um, but Fusion, I specifically tried to use this back whenever I was trying to engrave all those playing card cases and trying to get parallel lines and things. And in Fusion, like if I try to put like 100 lines and then like I'll trim them around a profile, yeah, no, no. Fusion did not like that, and it was so slow.
so it's probably possible to do it through the API, um, but I don't know how. Like, I'm not a coder.
Yeah,
And doing it manually would be a pain. Like, I have to do this on 100 tape measures. And probably, here's a question: am I going to use the same artwork on both sides of the tape measure? I would say
I
probably not. I'd probably generate two separate ones.
yeah
So I would need to do it 200 times, and I'm not doing that manually.
yeah no, that's annoying.
So I think the answer is figure either. So option one was
Well,
to do a different kind of artwork that used all closed profiles, and option two is just figure out how to do it. Like, there's people smarter than me. I can find someone to help me.
so are this is for the tape measures? Are am I still laser engraving that on there? So I don't need a DXF. I need a SVG,
Can you
and
not take a DXF?
I
Are you
can take
using
a D.
Lightburn?
Yeah, I can take a DXF, but if it's just lines, it'll be really thin. Don't you want it to have some width to it?
That's valid. With my current pattern, it doesn't really matter. I don't know. I'll look into it. I'll think about it.
But yeah,
But
because
you're right.
if we just do a DXF, like you can do thin lines because when you do like a ball mill or anything like that, you're getting the
It makes
width from your tool.
yeah.
But if you're generating these as DXF flat lines, we need a way to add weight to those lines, essentially from the center line out.
So we're back to the thin extruded method needing to work,
Well, not necessarily.
or doing it not in fusion,
I
which
was
is
gonna say
probably
if
the
you,
same way. But
yeah, I would say it makes sense to do it in Fusion if you're doing it with the trace method, like you're doing for the coins, where you're actually machining the lines. But if you're doing a laser, it makes sense to do it in a way where it generates an SVG instead of a DXF. And my laser will like it better. It can do DXFs, but it just they play nicer as images.
yeah, and honestly, that's probably easier to code. But like 99% of my coding experience has been with the Fusion API. Um,
Part of me
and
feels like that
using
would be harder.
it is the Fusion API is a mess, but like basically, I'm using it as a rendering engine. Fusion is a rendering engine. Maybe not the most sensible thing in
I I am a horrible programmer, but I'm using a scooter to plow a field. And
Yes.
I feel like if I go get a tractor at this point, it's going to be harder.
Yes, exactly that.
Oh,
Okay, on that note, you want to take us out?
yeah.
Don't forget to say the thanks.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. So, um thanks for listening to us ramble on this late evening where we're both tired and goofy. And this is Harrison with Precision Ingenuity here with AJ from Design the Everything signing out. And please tell all your friends and subscribe to our different podcast channels. And we'll see you all next week.
You have to say the call to action before you say the goodbye. Otherwise, everyone checks out at the goodbye and doesn't listen to our call to action.
I'm still tired.
Me too.